What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video, and in today's video we're going to be doing a review roundup, and I wanted to try to keep it within a similar theme. So we're going to be talking about two different fantasy things here today, and let's go ahead and jump straight into the first one, and that is Willow. Coming out in 1988 and directed by Ron Howard, with a story written by George Lucas and the screenplay written by Bob Dolman, this film stars Warwick Davis, Val Kilmer, Joanne Whaley, Jean Marsh, and has a really good score by James Horner. So with less than a week until the Disney Plus Willow new series that's a follow-up to this movie wraps up over on Disney Plus, I figured it was time to talk about the original film here on the channel. And for most people who are fans of Lucasfilm, they're of course going to think of Star Wars or Indiana Jones, but anybody who's a big fan of Lucasfilm also knows they have another little-known film known as Willow, starring Warwick Davis, who obviously is very well known in the Star Wars community as well, for playing mostly specifically Wicket from Return of the Jedi, but he has appeared in multiple Star Wars films, even has reprised a role as the character of Weasel, who we saw in The Phantom Menace, and then later in Solo, a Star Wars story. And so yeah, Willow is a very interesting film that takes us into a fantastical world, its own fantasy universe, and tells the story of a young man named Willow who finds a baby with his family and finds out that this baby is a very important baby and is a legacy baby and actually has a huge destined future, and this baby is called Elora Danan, and he pretty much finds out that this baby is this prophecy. Essentially, this baby has a prophecy of becoming the queen one day, the empress for everybody, that everybody is going to look to and is going to save them from darkness. And so pretty much you have this little guy named Willow who ends up discovering this baby and now has the task of getting this baby to safety. And amidst all this, you learn at the beginning of the film that the Queen Bavmorda, actually has been going out seeking this baby, trying to capture anybody who's recently given birth or is currently pregnant, to try to find the baby that has the marking on its arm to indicate that it is the prophesized Elora Danan. Along the way, Willow meets a man named Mad Mardigan, played by Val Kilmer, and the two of them, an unlikely pair, end up working together, growing to enjoy each other, even though there's a lot of banter between the two of them, and they try to get Elora Danan to safety. And that's pretty much what this movie is all about. We pretty much have this baby that's being transported by this little guy named Willow and Val Kilmer's character Mad Mardigan, and along the way there's some other friends that join them, and yeah, they have to try to defeat the Queen Bavmorda and save the kingdom. And I hadn't seen this movie in quite some time. I had seen it before, but it'd been many years. So going back and revisiting it, I can say that this for me was a cute, enjoyable, charming watch. The character of Willow specifically is the part that is the most endearing for me when I think about this film. Warwick Davis at this age in his life was just so cute and precious, and the character of Willow, though not necessarily incredibly well written or exciting, he's just played with a very big level of purity, and I think that Warwick Davis really captured it really well. There is the essence of purity through and through with his character, even with the new series that we have on Disney Plus. And I think that Warwick Davis, for the most part, does a really great job of capturing that purity in the character of Willow. He's just a really precious, kind character. And if you guys are a fan of Star Wars from the original trilogy, specifically, you know, Return of the Jedi, if you've seen any of the behind-the-scenes stuff when it comes to Warwick Davis being Wicket, or just other stuff with Warwick Davis at this time, he was just a cute, precious guy at this point in his life. Everybody just kind of loved him for just being this adorable guy. And so there is this adorable element to his character as Willow in this movie that just gives the whole movie this charm. And with him being the main one who is just adamant about getting Elora to safety, it just really emphasizes the overall themes and messages of the film, and the overall stakes of the film I feel are really heightened, specifically because of how much Willow wants to save this baby. And then of course you have some good humor in there with Val Kilmer. I thought he was great in this movie, going back and revisiting it. The movie is cheesy, it's corny, it has dated effects, it has a lot of dated elements. It's not necessarily the most well-written movie you've ever seen. It's not something that's gonna blow your socks off if you've never seen this before and you're like, hey, let me go back and revisit it so I can check out the show. It's no Lord of the Rings, you know, it's nothing like that. It's no Game of Thrones, but for its time and just kind of being this weird, whimsical, just fantasy one-off movie that exists, it's really charming and cute, and that's the most I can really say about this film. There's a lot of really awesome use of practical effects of the time that I really enjoyed seeing as well, but some of the digital effects, of course, are a little bit cheesy and a little bit dated, of course, as it was definitely way before its time in terms of heavy CG work. And yeah, the costume design is solid, the locations used, there's a lot of miniatures used as well, some great stop motion that's used in here to make some big creature effects come to life, and it just is very reminiscent of a lot of the effects that you'll see in Star Wars the original trilogy, which of course has been cleaned up over the course of time. There have been some CG add-ins for certain elements, whereas Willow doesn't have a whole lot of that, so a lot of it still feels really old school, which I really honestly enjoy, but I do recognize that some people might watch this movie and think, it looks a little bit dated, but yeah, I just really enjoy all the practical work that goes into this movie and the things that kind of made this film just feel like different. You do feel like you're in some sort of fantastical world, and I think that's something you have to praise the prop department for, and the costume department, and the, you know, locations and the settings and all those stuff. When it comes to the production of the film, I think there's a lot about this film that is very charming and of its time and shows us a different time in filmmaking that I just really miss in movies. As I mentioned before, you have James Horner doing the score here, the late great James Horner, and I think he gives a really good score here. You know, that definitely adds to the movie. It's a score that definitely adds to the emotion at times, at some of the epic moments. And yeah, you know, I don't have much more to say on this movie. I think it's just a simple, good, fun fantasy film. If you've never seen it before, I think it's worth checking out. I don't know that everybody's gonna love it. I think some people might be bored by it. It's not necessarily the strongest narratively, but where it really shines for me is in its goofiness, its silliness, the charm of the time. Warwick Davis specifically, I think he just gives the film a purity and something that you can kind of just root for as you're watching the film. While the film, again, may not be the strongest in the narrative department or the writing department, and might be goofy at times, I just think that the film is charming. And I watched it for a rewatch for myself for the first time in quite some time, and watched it alongside my fiance who had never seen the movie before, and she quite enjoyed it. She agreed, like it was her first things that she said was, that's not like necessarily the greatest movie, but it's just cute, and I enjoyed it. And I think that that's pretty much the best way to describe it. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the second thing we're going to be talking about here, and that is The Witcher Blood Origin. With directorial duties going to Vicky Jewson and Sarah Gorman, The Witcher Blood Origin is a 4-episode limited series starring Sophia Brown, Lawrence O'Farrane, Mirren Mack, Michelle Yeoh, Lenny Henry, and many more, and is the story of the creation of the first Witcher. So if you guys have been watching this channel for a while, you'd know that I have covered the other seasons of The Witcher, the main Witcher series here on the channel, and I've talked about how I am a big fan of the video games of that franchise, as well as the show. I'm not familiar with the books or any of the source material, so I'm just a fan of the stuff that you can see on screen. And yeah, I've been a big fan of the Witcher series. I haven't been able to talk about it in a video yet, or I haven't made a video on it yet, but I am very, very heartbroken to know that Henry Cavill will not be returning in the upcoming season, or at least I think he's doing one more season and then he's not going to be coming back. Either way, Henry Cavill is not returning to the show eventually, and they're going to be replacing him with Liam Hemsworth, who is not an actor I have anything against, but I'm super bummed on the fact that they're going to be recasting the role halfway through the show. I just think that that's the worst decision they could possibly make, and I know Henry Cavill left because of creative differences with the writers who wanted to start doing their own thing instead of following the source material, which Henry Cavill is a huge fan of. But that's neither here nor there, because today we're talking about The Witcher Blood Origin, which is a prequel to The Witcher show, and it tells the story of the creation of the first Witcher. And this show is framed around the fact that we're seeing the Bard from the Witcher series. We're seeing him in some really messed up situation. People are dying all around him, and then time stops and he meets this woman who ends up telling him the story, and he writes the story over the course of the show. And that's how the show is kind of bookended. We see that at the beginning, we see that at the very end, and the story we're told in the mix is about a group of elves who are trying to kill this empress for having killed people close to them. I won't get too deep into the spoilers for anybody who's interested, but this Empress has made a big move in order to reign supreme and completely solidify her place on the throne, and in doing so ended up obviously wronging many people, including a group of elves that choose to get all together, meeting other elves over the course of the series, a dwarf, some mages, and some other individuals, and they end up all teaming up to try and defeat this Empress at the end of the 4 episodes. However, the issue is the Empress has a huge monster, and they have no idea how to defeat the monster without fighting it with another monster. And that is when they get the idea to create the first Witcher, which, for anybody who's not familiar, a Witcher is essentially a monster hunter who is a human infused with a monster themselves. So they are kind of a monster in and of themselves, so that they can actually fight monsters, which is a pretty cool premise in the Witcher show. We get to see that there's many Witcher, but this one is about the creation of the first Witcher. And when I heard that premise, I was all in. The idea of the first Witcher being created, I'm all in. I want to see what that's all about. From what I understand, based on some of the criticisms I've seen online, it seems like they are kind of deviating from the original lore and source material, even though they're utilizing some of the similar characters that are part of the story, which has disappointed some. I was completely heartbroken to go online as this show premiered and saw that the show had about a 7%, I think, which was the lowest score for an audience on Rotten Tomatoes ever. Right now, as of filming this, it's gone up to 13%, which is not substantially better, and I believe it has like a 30-something% with critics. Yeah, I was really bummed to see that because I thought, dang, you know, The Witcher is usually a quality show. You know, it may be a little slow for some. It may not be for everybody, but it's very well made, very well acted. You have great special effects, both practical and digital, with a really great, you know, overall use of costume design and set design and locations and great performances. And I think that The Witcher show has been, you know, consistently good. I've really thoroughly enjoyed it. And so going into this, I was all excited for it too. I'm a huge fan of fantasy. This is something that seemed right up my alley, but unfortunately it was incredibly poorly written. You have a really great cast here that I think everybody seemed excited to be a part of. They wanted to be a part of this show. You can tell everybody has charisma and it has some energy and excitement to their performances. Everybody's giving their all to the dialogue. But the show is only 4 episodes, with most of those episodes ranging between 45 minutes to 55 minutes. And unfortunately, it just feels like a lot of that runtime is just used for a lot of the world building and lore and context that's being built around our story, but not so much about building the story in and of itself. The narrative felt messy, all over the place, and confusing, where my fiance and I and my buddy Rob, who joined us in watching it, we would all sit around and just kind of at the end of each episode think, what's really happening? Like, I don't really understand the character motivations. I don't really understand like why this is happening. Certain things would just happen kind of abruptly, which ultimately left us thinking, okay, well, but where are those character motivations coming from? Oh, I didn't even see that coming. That didn't really feel properly set up. This character just kind of showed up and is now part of the main characters. That happens multiple times over the course of the show. And just ultimately, you just keep looking at the screen thinking, who are these people? What's going on? What does that person want? Why are they doing that? And ultimately, I feel like the show was just so messy that it really wasn't until the 3rd episode that I felt like I had a pretty good bearing on all of the character motivations. And the show has a decent amount of characters that ultimately just feel underdeveloped and just feel like a messy addition to this story. And while you have great special effects, specifically in the costume department and the action, the visuals, and maybe there's some CGI and some green screen that's not as strong as the main Witcher series or other fantasy series that we see these days, it was overall a really well made show. It looks good, it's well acted. It just comes down to the dialogue and the script, which I just found to be incredibly messy. The screenplay for this show is just really, really dull, and it just left me feeling bored episode by episode. And by the time we got to the very end, even though there's some great action and some cool visuals, in a world where we do have some really top tier fantasy options to watch on TV and in movies, unfortunately this just kind of left me feeling dull and bored, and I don't really want to watch this show ever again, which is a bummer because I love the main Witcher series. So I went into this with excitement. My fiance, my buddy the Big Rob Theory, we all watched the main Witcher series together and we loved that show. And so it was such a bummer to go into this show and just see a really great cast and some really great special effects and costume design and production value kind of be wasted on what felt like a really just dull and boring story that just felt very one note. You knew where it was going. It was very predictable. I never really felt a sense of stakes. I never really felt like I was connected to these characters. And what's essentially a 4-hour movie just probably could have been trimmed down to an hour and a half long movie with a far tighter story. But instead we spend 4 episodes that are, you know, close to an hour long, that just feel like a lot of fantasy dialogue that, you know, at times does tell a story and at times does expand things, but at other times just feels like world building and lore building without a really strong narrative around it to just kind of give it some sort of legs to stand on. So yeah, guys, that's going to be my thoughts on Willow, a movie I do recommend, and I am enjoying the Disney Plus series. I have some criticisms, and just similar to, you know, the writing of the regular Willow movie, I don't necessarily think the new Willow show is anything that's going to blow people's socks off, but I am having a good time with it, especially a lot more than I've had a good time with The Witcher Blood Origin, which was, not good. I do not recommend watching The Witcher Blood Origin. I think if you're a fan of the main Witcher series and you just want to stick with watching that, I recommend doing that. But if you're looking for a new fantasy franchise to jump into, something that maybe you're not sure if you're going to be into, I recommend checking out Willow. It's cute, it's charming, it's of its time. There are definitely some goofy elements about it, but I think it's definitely worth watching if you're a fan of fantasy. And with the new show that's 8 episodes wrapping up this coming week on Disney Plus of the same name, Willow, that is a follow-up with Warwick Davis and other cast members returning all these years later. I think it's definitely worth watching. I think it's a franchise worth jumping on for. I think there's a great launching pad with this show to kind of expand upon it and do something cool with this universe. It's nice to see Lucasfilm doing more, as we have Indiana Jones coming out later this year. We have Willow now, and we have Star Wars projects going on at the same time. I hope that the Willow universe expands, because I really do like Warwick Davis in the role, and I really do like this universe for the most part. I think it can be a different kind of fantasy universe that we need, that doesn't have a whole lot of pre-established stuff already and kind of just be new every time, which is an exciting thing to see. So yeah, definitely recommend Willow, and do not recommend The Witcher Blood Origin. So a big thanks to you guys for watching. Hit that like button, comment your thoughts, subscribe for more videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.